Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's extremely important event where we expose Nigeria's continued silent slaughter by various non-state actors. The slaughter of Nigerian men, women, and children continues to burden the country's security forces. It has created one of the worst humanitarian crises facing Africa today, with an estimated almost 3 million internally displaced people, according to the UN and Human Rights Watch. Nigeria now has the third highest number of internally displaced people in Africa. And just 2 weeks ago, we witnessed evidence that the insecurity crisis in Nigeria is not going in the right direction. As reports confirmed, gunmen blew up a section of a train track between the capital Abuja and the northern city of Kaduna. Sadly, at least 8 passengers were killed, and more than 160 people are still missing. And as recent as Tuesday, just gone by, we saw the bombing of Mashaya Market in Taraba State, where it is now confirmed that at least 6 people have sadly been killed. My name's Chinwe Kalu Uma, and it is my privilege to be your host today. I am a volunteer for PSJ UK and have had the pleasure of lending my skills to support the media action group of the organisation. Joining us today is an expert panel who will help us navigate the human reality of the security crisis in Nigeria. And they will help us dissect the complexities of the causes and also the solutions. But before we get started, please do note some housekeeping rules. So the event is being recorded and it should be being streamed across Facebook and YouTube. We do encourage you to use the chat and comment area throughout the session to engage by asking questions or even just making comments or simply interacting with us and sharing your feelings. If you are watching after the live event, you can leave your comments on our website in the feedback section. And if you have not done so already, we do encourage you to please share this platform link to all your friends and family, even those within the diaspora, to be a part of this event. It's so important that we continue to build awareness about what is happening in Nigeria. It's great to see the fun that we see in Lagos and Abuja, but it's important to come back to reality and realize there is great suffering, and all of us have a duty to support in bringing the suffering to an end. Now, we haven't got too long. We've got just an hour to hear from some great speakers and to also hear from you towards the end. It's a great honor to be joined by Dr. Ifeolu Akintunde, who will share insight into the impact of the killings on education. Dr. Akintunde is the Director of Missions, Evangelism, and Discipleship at the Overseas Fellowship of Nigerian Christians and CEO of IOA Consults Limited. He's also involved in several Christian charities, as well as others working with persons with disabilities. He has won several awards for work within the community with international students and persons with disabilities. He is a public speaker, writer, and blogger who has contributed to discussions around disability, persecution of Christians, and faith in general. So we are going to pass over to Dr. Akintunde now. I give you the mic and I look forward to hearing what you have to say to us today. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because I recognize that you might be listening in various time zones and at various times. I would have said it's a pleasure to speak, but the subject I'm speaking on is one that is firstly dear to my heart, but secondly, does cause me a lot of grief as well. But it is indeed a privilege to speak on the impact of terrorism and all these activities on our education. But I really want to take education from a much broader perspective, because we all think about education as just our schools. But I think education is much more. It's what we learn as we interact with others in public, places like churches, mosques, and schools, etc. And those kinds of things that we learn tend to shape our lives and shape our futures. And I want to ask 3 questions because I know I don't have much time. The first question is, what access do we have to education, and what happens when we don't have those kinds of access? The second is, what are we actually being taught in those places? And the third question is, are we secure in our places of learning? So those are the three questions I wanted to look at in the short time that I have. Well, first question, what access do we have? Do you know, I was reading recently, and I was reading something that said that 13 years ago, there were 4 million children out of school in the Northwest and 3 million in the Northeast. That was 13 years ago. These are people who have not had access to the kind of education that we might call Western education. All right. Okay, cool. That's what access do they have? And when they don't have access, what do they become? Because they are 13 years now, they're adults without access to learning, without access to the kind of education that maybe people like us had. Their prospects are limited, their knowledge is limited, and they're more likely to be prey to people who do not have their interest at heart, who will drive them into places like violence, into places like killings, abductions. It's likely to create in them a psychological inferiority in any case that affects how they behave and how they interact. Do you know? And the lack of awareness is actually quite interesting, because the UNDP survey recently showed that many of these people who are fighting were not even aware that they were fighting against Nigeria itself as a country. They are actually a ready-made army of discontented people. So, what's my second question? Well, what do we learn? What have we been taught in schools? And there are two sides to this question. The other day, I heard some people speak, and one of them was saying that if there are 20%, if 20% of the population of any country, I'm not actually sure of the exact percentage, but perhaps 20 are Muslim, that they should fight for their lives for a Sharia state. I would have pointed out that that's not even up to 50%, but I didn't think it was worth the argument, because this person really did sound quite educated. So my question was, where was he learning this? He was educated enough to be engaging with me on Clubhouse, by the way. But where was he learning this kind of talk, that he should fight with his life if only 20% of the population of his country is Muslim? And what is that teaching him? What is it making him become? What is it making him do? How is it making him react? In a country where one of the most violent terrorist groups in the world is actually espousing an anti-Western education ideology. That's the first aspect of the question, but there is a second aspect of the question. It is that the Christian Association of Nigeria, I heard recently, had a meeting with the government, and they were discussing the education curriculum. And apparently, part of the proposal that was coming out was a removal of Christian religious studies and history. When I heard that, I asked myself questions. Like, for example, the Germans still study their history. Do you know when they say those who do not study history repeat the same mistakes? If our country, if our government is actually thinking about removing history from our curriculum, is it surprising that 50 years after the Biafran War, we still find people talking about it, and talking about it without a proper understanding of what happened, or without a proper understanding of where it's taking us to? Now, I went to a school where I was taught, where I had the opportunity to learn Islamic religious studies and Christian religious studies. I chose to study Christian religious education, but I was aware that some of my friends were studying Islamic religious studies, and I respected them for it. If we have our opportunity to learn religious studies, we also have the opportunity to learn that those who do not agree with us have a right to live, have a right to their life. What are we being taught? It's a very important question. But the third question is, even those who get to school, are they secure? It was about 8 years ago that several girls were kidnapped in Chibok. And we all thought, wow, What a serious thing. The Bring Back Our Girls campaign was launched and all kinds of things. And we thought it would never happen again. But we were wrong. We're so wrong because it's still happening. The number of kidnappings in schools across several states was so great last year. And then I read a story in the Daily Trust in July last year. And that story said that the parents of children who were being kidnapped were being told, we are marrying your girls off. This is happening in a place where, as I said, 13 years ago, several million people had no access to education. If I don't have access to education and someone offers me education, would I go for it if I think I might be kidnapped? That's a question for parents to think about. But will they send their children to school in those situations? And again, my question is, what do they become? Do you know, the other day we read, of course, that Nigeria is number 7 among countries in the list of persecuted countries. The countries ahead of us are Afghanistan, North Korea, Somalia, Libya, Yemen, and Eritrea. All these countries are known for violence and for repression. It is not a company that I believe that the most populous, the most naturally endowed country, the country with one of the greatest potentials in Africa should belong. But that's where we are. And my question is, how did we get there? How can we get out? What are we teaching people about our lives, about our expectations, about where we want to be, about who we want to be, about the value we place on human lives, and about the safety of learning itself? Well, I think I've asked a lot more questions than I've given answers. But I hope that this being the beginning of the session, it gives us an opportunity to think through these issues in our minds, ask ourselves the questions, and as citizens and as government, take the right decisions. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Akintunde, and thank you for all you do to contribute to really just making Nigeria a better place. I mean, you've really given us something to think about, the importance of education. 4 million children out of school in the northwest of Nigeria alone. That is just one region. And it's, just thinking about where will those children be in the next 10 years. And I love the point about respecting the rights of people's beliefs. Nigeria is also probably, I believe, one of the most diverse countries in the world. So many different languages and ethnicities. If we do not respect the rights of, then of course that is a recipe for disaster. Really hope that all of you joining us today are thinking about little ways that perhaps you can contribute to helping bring education to some of these children who are currently out of education for no fault of their own. Now, just moving on, we are going to hear from Mr. Steve Kefas, and Steve Kefas will be highlighting the extent of the killings in Nigeria. Mr. Kefas is a Kaduna-based citizen journalist, a human rights defender, and entrepreneur. He's an emerging community leader with passion for justice, equity, and fairness. He was once a political prisoner for 162 days for his strong advocacy against the killings of Christians in southern Kaduna. Mr. Kefas has written several reports and articles on the unending killings of indigenous people in northern Nigeria. Our hope is that you will lead this event well-informed, sensitized to the plight of our fellow humans, and charged to contribute to peace building in Nigeria in a way that works for you. Now, I'm going to pass over to Mr. A play for you. Hopefully, this will bring the reality of what is happening on ground in Nigeria to you and potentially trigger you to play your part to help bring it to an end. Thank you.
When you lost a person, just one person, how do you feel? A close person like a family, a brother or mother or sister. Then all of a sudden in a day, you lost 10 of them at a time, and you were there watching it. I and my family members were in the room eating happily. We were 12 in the room. Suddenly we just saw people. They just entered inside the room. They didn't say anything. They were just shooting, like they were shooting randomly, shooting everyone. As they were just shooting, everyone was just shouting, crying for help. Nowhere to run to because they were already at the door. And we were just sitting round all together. Then when they noticed, like they shot everyone, but it's like one of them was thinking maybe they shot me, but I did not die. So he now came close to me and set the gun and shoot me twice on my neck and my shoulder. When they shot me, it's like I fainted, but after a few minutes I realized I opened my eyes and I was breathing, but I knew that I had a wound. I was looking at everyone lying down helplessly, dead, blood everywhere. I can't cry. I don't even know what I was thinking. It was doing as if it was a dream, but it's a reality. And there's one of my in-law. It's like when they were shooting, the bullet didn't touch her. After raping her, they still shoot her. After they finished their operation, they stayed long to make sure that they achieve what they want. I thought I was going to give up. I thought I can't continue school. I thought I was going to die. I was looking sick, always scared. Till now, like mostly at night, I used to freak. I don't know. It's not that maybe I'm having a bad dream, but it has just become like a natural something to me. Like it happens almost every day. It affected my father. Like he has lost hope. He thinks there's nothing useful to him again in this world. Like everything he has worked for just went off. A day or in a minute, and then there's nothing you can do about it. Nobody's talking about it. Like everything just died just like that. I always feel the pain because I know it's not a good thing to lose someone in a situation like that, being killed by someone, and then that person that commit that crime, they will not even ask of him, like he's just gone freely like that, and then you will be the one to suffer the pain, the burden and everything.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Sometimes I get emotional when I really want to talk about what is happening in Nigeria. But I think that the least we could do for humanity is to continue to hold such conversations, is to continue to inform the public within and outside this country of what is really happening. In 2014, I became more interested in what is happening in my society, Southern Kaduna to be precise. And every day we get reports of attacks on communities. But before then, as a young boy who was still in school, in 2010, there was an attack in Dogonahawa in Plateau State, where hundreds of people were killed in one night. I think for someone like me who was born in the late 80s, that was the first time I was hearing about mass killing in my life. Then in 2011, there was the post-election crisis that rocked some areas, some parts of northern Nigeria. After that election, it's like a declaration was passed against Christians in the Middle Belt region of Nigeria. In 2013, in Southern Kaduna, March to be precise, in one night, over 300 villagers were slaughtered in some communities in Kaura local government area. It was a very sad incident. And what baffles someone like me then was the fact that there's no accountability. So it kept growing. In 2014, the killings got to their peak. Then between July 2014 and the general election, the killings ceased. And I was wondering, why did they cease? Suddenly, the attackers stopped coming. Then after the 2015 general election, where there was a change in leadership of the country, somewhere around June 2015, the killing started in Southern Kaduna. It spread to Benue in Agatu, where between 300 and 400 people were slaughtered in one night. That's in 2016. And the killings continue to spread to different parts of the Middle Belt. A lot has been said about what is happening in the Middle Belt. But as recently as 2020, I decided to broaden my horizon on, hey, what is really happening? I wanted to know what is happening. So I began to travel. I went to Katsina. I went to Niger. I went to Zamfara State. I wanted to know, why are people being killed? Because the Nigerian government, in trying to excuse these killings or in trying to justify these killings, they will tell you the killings are not limited to the Christian area or to the Middle Belt area. And that is why in my presentation, I would be shedding more light on the dimensions of this killing. In one of the videos we watched earlier, Dr. Richard touched part of it where he said they are ethnic, they are religious. But I want to state here today that from my interviews with victims in Zamfara, Katsina, Niger, Sokoto, Plateau, Benue, Kaduna, Taraba, and all other areas, one thing stands out. The aggressors or the killers are Fulani herdsmen. And in case some of us might not know, or maybe we've forgotten, in 2014, the Global Terrorism Index, GTI, declared the Fulani herdsmen as the fourth most deadliest terror group in the world. That was in 2014. I was discussing with a friend. I said, oh, how comes after 2014, the Global Terrorism Index have not really told the world where the Fulani herdsmen are? What happened? Because with the level of sophistication, with the frequency of their attack, I'm sure between 2014 and date, they should be the most deadliest terror group in the world. But that's a question for another day. I wouldn't know why the Global Terrorism Index is not saying anything about them. But last week, the ICC prosecutor was in Abuja, where he met with the president of Nigeria. I'm bringing this here because something happened. The president said that the activities of Boko Haram and other criminal elements has nothing to do or have nothing to do with ethnicity and religion. That is not true. The facts speaks otherwise. Having said that, these killers or terrorists or attackers are of the Fulani stock. The victims, on the other hand, are 95% non-Fulanis, or 95 to 97% non-Fulanis. Now, my reason for saying 97% is because sometimes the 3% are those caught in the crossfire. I will explain. I was in Zamfara State, January this year, and I was asking a question. Who are the victims being killed? And I realized something shocking, that 99% of the victims are local indigenous Hausa people. Now, among these Hausa people, they are Hausa Christians living in the north, far north. You have them in Katsina, you have them in Zamfara, you have them in Sokoto, you have them in Bauchi, you have them in Niger, and many other parts. You have them in Kaduna. A lot of people, like most times you hear the Kaduna state governor coming to tell the world that it's not about Christians being killed in southern Kaduna, that Muslims too are being killed in northern Kaduna. But the fact speaks otherwise. In Giwa local government, for instance, I've been able to uncover that most of the communities that have been attacked frequently or consistently in Giwa local government are Christian community. Even though most times the casualty, of course, also affect the Muslims. But the bottom line here is that the killings are both ethnic, religious, and political. Now, political in the sense that in Kaduna State, where I come from, for instance, let me cite an example with Kajuru local government area, where the Adara people are situated. That is where Alheri Magaji comes from. It is one local government that has suffered so much atrocities in the last 7 years. In 2018, their paramount ruler, who is like the overseer of their tradition, was abducted on his way from Kaduna. A week later, he was murdered in cold blood. By November of that year, the government paraded some set of criminals that they are the people who abducted and killed the monarch. As I speak to you today, there've not been any news about those people that were arrested. But that is not even the story. Shortly after his demise, the state government balkanized the chiefdom he left behind. Now, this is a 95% predominantly Christian local government. And what did the governor do? He established an emirate over the local government. That's the political dimension. And since then, that local government has never known peace. It has been one atrocity or the other, one attack or the other. And like I said earlier, there has not been accountability. Now, I had to go back to check other African countries, what is happening there. Somalia, for instance, we've had cases of Somalian government convicting Al-Shabaab terrorists and executing them. Because of our time, I cannot go into details, but in 2016, in 2021, and in 2018, the Somalian government executed terrorists, those who were convicted for terrorism. But in Nigeria, the case is different. Instead, in 2016, the federal government came up with a policy they tag Operation Safe Corridor. It's a policy that, reintegrates terrorists, non-terrorists. These are people that have carried out massacre, large-scale massacre. These people were, in quotes, rehabilitated and reintegrated back to the society. And I also wanted to know, okay, are they really changed? The answer is no. Because these guys are not like the common criminals you see on the street. These guys are terrorists that are operating with an ideology. But the Nigerian government wants me and you to believe that these guys are repented and they've been reintegrated back into the society. But no, the senator representing Borno South, Senator Ali Ndume, criticized that policy and said it times without number that those so-called repentant terrorists have gone back to engage in terrorist activities. But even as we speak today, the federal government is still reintegrating these guys back into the society. And another angle that has not been discussed very well is the angle of alliance or relationship between the herdsmen operating in the northwest and the Boko Haram terrorists in the northeast. 2 years ago, I wrote an article raising questions that no, these guys are not just herdsmen, they are terrorists, because whether we like it or not, their modus operandi suggests that they may have something in common with Boko Haram. And I'm happy to say today that the federal government has also acknowledged the fact. But why wait this long to come to the reality that these guys are not mere criminals or are not bandits as the media wants us to believe? So, and the statistics is disturbing. In the first 3 months of the year 2022, 2,098 people have been killed in Nigeria. The first 3 months, January, February, and March 2022, according to Premium Times. It's less. It's less. Between the 10th and 16th of the month of April alone, 250 people were killed, with 150 in Plateau. This is a country that is not yet at war. Officially, the country might not be at war, but there's a war ongoing in Nigeria. The testimonies of these victims are so disturbing. Over 2,000 churches have been burned between 2015 and date. That's the disturbing statistics. And what baffles me most is the fact that not one terrorist has been convicted of these crimes against humanity. So how is it going to stop? Where there's no justice. In 2017, I was in a village in southern Kaduna called Goska Community. Goska Community made headlines in 2016, 24th of December, the eve of Christmas, where this jihadist Fulani herdsmen invaded the community and began to kill people. The eve of Christmas. I went there in 2017, April. I was interviewing some victims, and I met a young boy called Enoch. And I said, Enoch, what happened? The only thing he could tell me was that Fulani came, they killed his mother, killed his father, and killed his little sister. He was 7 then, 2017. Now, for someone like Enoch, Enoch is going to grow up with bitterness in him. The only thing that will give Enoch some sense of belonging and fulfillment is when the perpetrators of that atrocity are brought to book. When he sees on the TV.
Sorry to come in there, Mr. Kafas. You're absolutely right. And that's why PSJ UK comes in. We are also about social justice. I think sometimes we do forget that part. There has to be justice. And the point about Enoch, not just the justice, but also rehabilitating him through education that can help him, go through that trauma. And it's similar to, what our first speaker discussed. Education is so key to bringing a stop to these killings and insecurity in Nigeria. We're going to have to wrap up there. Unfortunately, Mr. Kefas, I could listen to you for hours. So informative, lots of food for thought. Thank you for putting things into perspective. I often hear from fellow journalist friends that, what's happening in Nigeria is so complicated, and often it is the reason why it's not reported, it's underreported, it's misreported. But that cannot be our excuse anymore. We have to start to break down those complexities and really get to the core of the issue, which is there are innocent people are being killed on a daily basis at mass, and we need to bring this to an end. I just want to also mention that Blessing Kogi, who was from the first video, is with us today. She's actually listening in, and we are going to hear from but fixed story get to also ask her some. Please do put on today. Please do add it to the comment. Before we do speak with Blessing, who we are going to move on to another story by Philemon, who will talk about the excruciating heat of fire that was endured to save his life.
Because members of Ruku community Gashi district in Plateau State were considered infidels by the Fulani terrorists. On the 23rd of June 2018, these Fulani terrorists had judgment pronounced and carried out on them.
That day, my friends and I were sitting outside the house when we heard a gunshot. Then it became sporadic. We started running. Soon after, we started hearing the chants, Allah Akbar, followed by loud and now consistent gunshots. We saw a horde of Fulani men coming into our community. We asked what we had done to them, but they responded with more shouts, Allah Akbar, and we will kill you today, and more gunshots. My friends and I identified some of the Fulani men. They had settled with us in our community. When they kept shooting, we ran into a house and hid in the bathroom. The Fulani men went after us and set the bathroom on fire. There was a bag of charcoal on the roof. It began to drop on us. With my bare hands, I redirected the burning charcoal so that it wouldn't burn us. They waited patiently for us to burn. It was as though they had decided either the fire kills us or they will shoot us dead. Therefore, we pretended to be dead every time the charcoal fell on us. One of my friends could no longer bear the heat. He attempted to escape, but the men shot him in the chest. When the fire subsided, one of the attackers came into the room and turned our bodies to confirm we were dead. He shouted to the group, "The infidels are dead." Satisfied, they left the room. At 7 p.m., we got up and walked out of the bathroom. Those who hadn't been injured saw us and helped us into a community called Tenti Baba. At the clinic, the doctor administered pain relief drugs and referred me to Ola Hospital in Jos because he said my case was critical. I spent 3 days at the hospital. My body, however, started swelling. I was referred again, this time to Jos University Teaching Hospital.
Philemon was discharged to live with his sister in Bokos after 11 months at Jos.
Just so sad. as well as all the other things that we will talk through you can do to support us, donating, volunteering. You know, at PSJ UK, we are a faith-based organization, so we do believe in the power of prayer. And I think for myself and all of us, we are definitely praying for Philemon and his recovery. But now we are joined by Blessing Kogi. Miss Blessing Kogi, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Nigeria. And thank you for sharing your story. That alone just shows the power you hold and your courage. Please share with us how you are coping now today following that horrific loss of your family members and the pain that you faced so far. How are you coping, Blessing?
It has not been easy to stay without the family members you've grown with, and then with the pain of seeing them dead, like watching them when they were killing them. You can't help, you can't do anything. It's very painful, but I thank God that I'm trying my best to scale through, to go over the trauma, but it's really painful. It has not been easy, but with God, I'm trying my best.
I want to ask, have you had any support from the government, locally or nationally? The Nigerian government, that is. Have you had any support?
I did not have any support from the government. Even when I was in the hospital, it was just family members that contributed to pay the hospital bills. The government didn't show up, they didn't say anything. Nothing come from them.
And what is your hope? What is your hope? And the future of those around you now? Please tell the audience here in the UK and around the world.
Network was cracking. I think you should repeat yourself.
I asked what's your hope for the future, for you and for those around you? I want you to share that with the audience listening here in the UK and around the world. What do you hope for yourself and for the future of Nigeria?
What I hope for myself is to do more better, and one day I should be an advocate. I should speak for the voiceless. I should stand for them, because so many people are suffering because of this attack, killings, and the rest, and nothing is being said. So I want to be a peacemaker, advocate, stand for people, speak for them, because I'm not wishing what happened to me to happen to anyone, even my enemies. So I want to be an advocate, speak for the people, make peace.
Blessing. You're doing that right now. I mean, that's what you're doing right now. You're speaking for the voiceless. Because of you, so many of us now have a deeper understanding of the human impact of the insecurity. Okay, we're going to move on to. Is Blessing still there? Okay, yeah, thank you. So we are going to move on to our final last human story in the form of a video. We have Rahila, who lost her left arm, her unborn baby, and everything during an attack on her community. If we can just take a second to listen to her story, and then we will move on to Q&A, where you can ask us your questions. Thank you.
At 6 a.m., the 11th of March 2019, Rahila, her children, and blind grandmother that had come to take refuge were in their home.
Abun da ya faru da ni ran 11 ga watan uku.
Suddenly, we heard some of our community members shouting, alerting everyone to get out of their homes because the Fulani terrorists had entered our village. Terrified, I tried to quickly get myself and family out, but because I was almost 9 months pregnant, it was a struggle. I managed to get my daughter up so I could get her on my back and run. My older son had already run out of the house.
From a distance, she could hear the Fulani men threatening the villagers.
I heard them shouting Allah Akbar and telling people they were going to kill them. In defiance, some villagers shouted back at the terrorists, demanding to know what crimes they had committed. By this time, our village was already surrounded. Those who escaped got out only by the grace of God. I tried to run with my daughter on my back, but it was difficult. 2 men stopped us and they cut down my son and daughter with a machete. They severed my left hand twice. When they struck me the first time, I felt the pain. But when they slashed my hand the second time, I had lost all consciousness.
Sai ɗaya ya yanka yaro na, sai ni kuma ɗaya zai same ni hannu na wannan an sare shi so biyu. So ɗayan ne na gani, na biyun kuma ban san lokacin da na fadi a kasa.
Rahila's face, hand and head are covered with deep cuts. The wound on her face is one of many. She was left on the ground to die. It is by the grace of God I survived, she says.
Da suka gama, akwai masu harbe-harbe, akwai masu yanka dinnan, ga aeroplane yana gudu a sama kamar zai soka kasa kamar zai hau, bai haura ba bai soka ba.
While the terrorists carried on with their operation, Rahila recounted seeing a helicopter hovering in the air. It will seem the helicopter was about to land, but would lift up again. It eventually flew away when the operation was over.
When I regained consciousness, the terrorists had gone. A search party was now present, looking for survivors. They found me. They did not know how to lift me, seeing I was 9 months pregnant. So they put 2 sticks together, placed me on it, and laid me under a mango tree. When the police finally showed up, the assault on lives and property had been completed. My mother-in-law was killed. Our house burnt down. We couldn't recover anything from our home. My blind grandmother was also cut in several places, but she survived the attack. Others were not so lucky.
Rahila was taken to the General Hospital in Kaduna, where they amputated her hand and stitched all the cuts on her face and the rest of her body. In the process, she lost her baby. The doctors confirmed it was a baby boy. She was due to deliver in March, the month of the attack. The child on her back, however, survived the attack.
Lokacin na nima abin siya sabulu, ba na samu san tuna da ɗana da hannayena.
Rahila and her family are now entirely dependent on the support they receive from strangers.
I know this is quite difficult to listen to and watch for myself as well. And this is why we do these events. You know, this is not just for the sake of it or to tick a box. You know, people are really, really being impacted. And I think it's just, important to take a pause and just remember that these are real life stories. This is real situations. So please do stick with us. We will share how you can contribute and how you can make a difference to people's lives. We have our last speaker. I'm very, very happy to introduce Miss Alheri Bawa. Alheri Bawa is the co-founder of RADI, which stands for Resilient Aid and Dialogue Initiative. It's a non-governmental organization based in Kaduna State, Nigeria, and also serves as the Director of Humanitarian Aid. RADI works directly with vulnerable people, especially youth and women, to assist them grow into positive and contributing members of their communities. Within the past 2 years, RADI has empowered over 200 widows, organized a medical outreach that catered to over 600 people, organized business management trainings, and during the COVID-19 lockdown of 2020, RADI provided palliatives to over 1,000 poor families. Recently, RADI keyed into a rural farmers practice to execute an incentive that benefited over 80 farmers. And in the past year alone, RADI has reached out to over 3,000 displaced people by providing various forms of assistance. Miss Alheri Bawa has reached out to over 3,000 internally displaced people by providing various forms of assistance. Miss Bawa's involvement and experience in these activities has placed her in a position where she is in touch with and has access to people at the grassroots. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll pass over to hear from you now. Thank you. Over to you.
Hello. Hello, everybody. My name is Alheri Magaji, and I want to thank the organizers again for this, because this is all we ask for sometimes, just to have our voices heard. So after what everybody has said, I want to focus on the victims, because we all talk about how the government denies the way the conflict goes, the way they say it's a crisis between two people, conflict between two people, which is false. I talk directly to the victims. That's what we do. And I know Rahila as well. We've helped Rahila. And because we're in contact with the victims, we know that this is not the way the government says it is. Most of these people will be sleeping or retiring for the night. Most of them will be in their beds at night, and then they get attacked by gun-wielding men. And never have we been in contact with any victim that will tell us that, oh, they went out to fight a certain people from a certain village. We've never heard that. So that narrative, based on the people we've spoken to, is very false. I'll testify to that. And then our advocacy comes in, okay, if the government is overwhelmed with what is happening, or let's say they don't know, let's say, what are they doing after the crisis? What are they doing about the victims of this crisis? We have been talking about them at the very least, having a hospital where victims can go and get treated. But what happens after an attack is, like the stories we heard today, after an attack like that, where you see your loved ones being hatched to death, where you yourself are covered in blood, and then the neighbors who are supposed to help you in a normal circumstance are also being affected. So you find a whole village with nobody to help. And then they're literally there with no money to go to the hospital. And we've had cases where limbs had to be cut off because they didn't have less than $1 to go to the hospital to treat a bullet wound, for example, and then the leg will get rotten, and then they'll have to amputate the leg by the time we come in. So this is what we're saying. What is the government doing about these victims? In 2019, at the last count, official count we had, in Kajuru local government alone, there were 12,480 internally displaced people. This is in one local government, and this is in 2019. So you can imagine the number of displaced people we have today. Last time Sokapu made a statement, it was in the range of 30 to 50,000 people. And this is where another issue comes up. The government doesn't allow them to stay in camps. So how do you help them when you don't know where they are? And when you see a group of displaced people in a camp, it has to be from a recent attack where there's absolutely nothing anybody can do. So maybe they go to the town hall or a primary school in the village or a nearby village that is safer, and then you can see them there for a few weeks. But because they're not being taken care of, because they don't have food, because they need where to sleep, because they have to rebuild their lives, if you go back there in 2 weeks, they probably will not be there. So even when you take down their names, they usually don't have phones that have been lost in the attacks, and there's no way to reach them. So how do you help people you don't know where to find? So it's been hell. It's been hell for these victims, most especially, and for everybody in Southern Kaduna who sees these things that happen. We, like Stephen Kefa said, there's no accountability. You know, when you're in your house and then they keep attacking you, and then nobody's arrested for it. And then next thing you see on the news that there's a peace treaty being held. And I keep asking, if they don't know who these people are, who are they doing peace treaties with? Because bandits are supposed to be faceless, right? So it doesn't make sense when they say they're having peace treaties. That means they know the people who are carrying out these attacks. We are yet to see another group of people saying Southern Kaduna people went to attack them and, oh, they're looking for succor. We're yet to see that. So I think it's only fair that if they say this is a conflict between farmers and herders, we should see two sides, you know, coming out with proof that, okay, we have injured on both sides, those arrested on both sides. But no, instead, those who are trying to look for money for their loved ones who are in the hospital or who are sick or who don't have food are mostly the ones who are, again, being arrested when the security men come after an attack. So it's one thing after the other. There's no compassion, there's no empathy, there's no accountability, and then victims are left to be on their own. We're talking of material things like clothes and food. We're not even talking about the mental trauma that comes with these things. We have little kids who, when they hear an aeroplane pass by, they be on themselves because they're traumatized. Every time they hear an aeroplane, to them, it's an attack coming in. And because we work with these people, I know firsthand, we have a baby, a 2-month-old, who had 3 bullets removed from his head. We have women like Rahila, whose stomachs were stomped on till the babies were killed. We have people like Philibus, who lost his mom, lost his dad, lost 2 sisters. He's now an orphan. We have Isaiah and Zipporah from a family of 8. They're now a family of 5. Isaiah was 13 or 14 at the time, lost his 3 older siblings and both parents in one night. So we have all these things, and we have a government who gaslights the victims because you come out to talk about it and they say we're lying or we're exaggerating. We are not even saying the full stories. The stories are too many to even have time to talk about them. So we're happy for organizations like PSG who help to tell our stories, who help to tell the world that these things the government is saying is false, is not. We're not exaggerating, we're not lying. These things happen. I work with them. I see firsthand what this thing does. And all we're saying right now is, even if the government can't contain it, they should at least take care of the victims. They should at least acknowledge that there are displaced people all over Southern Kaduna. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ms. Aderi Magaji. And firstly, apologies on the name. I think I mentioned the incorrect surname. Thank you for the work that you also do as well. I mean, you said so many things, so many questions actually that I've had myself personally around these killings. You've really given us things to think about. So thank you so much for that. And you know, as you mentioned, you know, sometimes it's just a platform to bring the awareness, so we know what is going on. And no one is powerless. Nobody is powerless. We have the ability to be our brother's keepers in various unique ways. Thankfully, PSG UK has created multiple avenues for support. You can support the work we are doing and the work that others are doing, because we have various collaborations with other organizations. You can provide necessary resources to displaced victims. I was very shocked to hear that Blessing Kogi has received no support from government, both nationally or locally. You can give a one-off donate to PSJ UK. You can do that via our website. You can also volunteer your time, whether it's an hour a month or an hour a week. Anything you can give to us can go a long way. I am a volunteer. I have done so for the last 2 years. And that is not because I'm not busy in my personal life, but because this is something we have to tackle. This is an emergency, and it has been so for a very long time. But you can also share information about what we do on social media. Honestly, that goes a very long way. Some of you have 300 followers. Some of you have 300,000 followers. Please do be a voice to the voiceless. They need your voice. And you can also contact your MP. We have made it very simple. If you go on our website, we have a contact your MP form. We've already written the letter for you. You can edit it accordingly and send it directly to your MP via our website. So you can use that tool to do that. And then lastly, stay up to date. We have a newsletter. Register on our website. That's psjuk.org. And be kept up to date with our monthly newsletter. We provide an update of all the various things happening, the attacks, the work that we're doing, and also provide hope, because there are people that are fighting this very, very important fight. Okay, and unfortunately, we do not have enough time. We have run out of time for Q&A, but please do leave questions on the various platforms you're watching from after this live event, and we will endeavor to answer them after this event. We do have more events coming up. We have an event coming up that follows this in June. What we have done today is really lay the foundation of what is going on. We have brought awareness in hope that you would also share this information with others. But we want you to continue the momentum. Keep joining our events. Keep hearing from those who are impacted. It's been a fantastic opportunity today. And our hope is that the giant of Africa, as we're called, Nigeria is called, will definitely meet its potential. We'd like to give a massive thank you to all our speakers, Dr. Ifeolu Akintunde, Ms. Alheri Magaji, Mr. Stephen Kefas, thank all of you for joining and listening to us. Thank you to Blessing Kogi for joining us and sharing your human story live. We are so grateful for the power that you hold, and we will do everything in our power here at PSJ UK to support yourself and those around you, and to help you fulfill what you'd like to do, which is continue to advocate for others. From myself and the rest of the PSJ UK team, thank you for joining us today. Have a lovely weekend, and we hope to see you again in June at our next event. Take care.